Welcome to What's Your Next Move, the podcast for peak performers who are making things happen but are running into roadblocks that prevent them from getting what they want. Whether you work for someone else, you're an entrepreneur, thinking about starting your own business, or at a point in your life where you just can't make the move from where you are to where you want to go, you're in the right place. This podcast is all about answering one question: what's your next move? And helping you harness your power so your next move is the one that changes your life. I'm your host and resident provocateur, Arlene Battishill, and I want to know, what's your next move? Hi there, I'm Arlene Battishill, your host and resident provocateur, and I am thrilled to have my friend and guest, Ed, on the show. Ed, tell everybody, you know what, I can never pronounce your last name, so can you pronounce it for me?
No problem. Yes, Ed Troxell.
You know what, you pronounce it exactly the way you look at it, but I'm not used to having someone who has an X in their last name. And that's where I stumble. Yep. So it's like, no, you're my friend. I know you. We work together, but you know what? I'm not going there with your last name. You don't even have to try with my last name. So
it's all good. Exactly. As long as we have first names, we're good.
Yeah, totally good. So Ed Troxell, will you tell our audience
there you go.
a bit about yourself? Just let them know where you're at right now with what makes up your work life, and then we'll get into our conversation.
Yeah, definitely. So I actually am a business development and tech expert. Basically what that means is that I really help anybody from entrepreneurship to small business owners to nonprofits really figure out what their next step is, helping them with their research, when that can involve market research, that can involve technology research. I'm a tech guy, but I'm more than just a tech guy. I help you with your technology. I break things down. I find ways to make things easier for you and your team. And then I go past that, and I'm able to provide you with your market strategy, being able to help you with social media and trying to figure out how to engage your audience organically without paying for ads, and really bring in that real customer experience and being able to have that, what I call the user experience, right? Being able to put yourself in your customer's shoes. And through all of that, you're able to really provide value and a community that people want to not only show up to, but stay as well. And also, I help build websites. So it's kind of, tech guy and more.
That's beautiful. So let's make this a little bit practical right now. So I have a clothing business that, of course, all my listeners know about, and it's protective clothing for people who ride motorcycles. Now, if you were the guy I needed to come to for something, take my clothing business as an example and tell me how you would apply what it is that you know as a tech guy and a business guy to my business of selling out on the internet. I'm selling physical products out on the internet. I have a halfway decent following on social media. What can you do for me if I'm coming to you?
Yeah. So just bare bones right there, I would definitely first look at, what have you already done? Like what have you set up with all of that on your social media following? What have you posted? What types of posts? Are they just images? Are they text? Are they videos? Are they Facebook Lives? Really diving deep to see, what have you tried? What have you noticed might have worked for you in the past? And what can we do here for the future? And being able to break down. I also like to take a look at the clothes themselves and look at those products and see, what can we do with those? Like, can people picture themselves in there? Are there ways that we can make them feel online as if they have it right there with them, or that they're able to grab that and touch it, even though it's online? Really being able to see that. And really, when you're selling on a website, especially, taking a look at the user experience. When somebody comes to your website, what do they see? How do they get from point A to point B? is there a simpler way that we can make this happen? Because when people come to a website, you only have a few seconds to capture their attention, and you only get a few seconds with them before they're gone. So we want to make sure that we maximize that and provide a good user experience. So that way they keep coming back for more, but more importantly, they tell their friends about it.
Beautiful. And I'm assuming that all of what you're doing with my website and my presence on social media and so forth for this clothing business of mine is that you are going to help me increase my sales. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
all
exactly.
right, we're done. That's the end of the show. Everybody hire Ed. You hire
There you
my
go.
friend
There
Ed.
you
Tell him
go.
I referred you. And he'll give you a big ass discount, friends and family discount, but don't expect free.
Exactly.
Okay, brilliant. Now, before I start digging deep and becoming the resident provocateur with you, my victim, okay, now I'm going to assume, and correct me if I'm wrong, that what you're doing now is not what you've always done for your career. Is that correct? And is that fair to say?
Yes and no. And I'll say the reason why I say yes and no is because entrepreneurship and being a business owner has been in my blood, I think, since I came out the womb. Like, I'm not even kidding. And I've been working ever since I was 5 years old. So it's really been a thing that I've always done. But have I done it by myself for my own business? Not until about 3 years ago.
Okay, so you were always working for someone else until you then ventured out on your own. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. Always working for someone else until I finally decided to say it's all me. I got to give myself a shot, and I got to invest in myself and my future.
Got it. Okay, so let's back up 3 years now.
Yeah.
Now, let me just frame something here, and that is, okay, here's Ed, who has been doing something that you obviously love for your entire career. And then you now decide you're going to work for yourself. And so you, like many people, including myself, have spent most of our careers working for other people and just doing that gig where we're dependent upon somebody else providing us with a paycheck. And then somehow something happens where we finally make a decision and say, my next move is going to be, I'm doing this on my own. Now, was there a pivotal moment in your life where you decided, I'm not doing this other thing and I'm going to go out on my own? What precipitated you going out on your own?
Yeah, I literally just got chills because I remember the day so vivid in my head. And so, so I am a hard worker, and I always show up and I deliver and provide more than enough, right? And so I am, it was hard for me to think of going out on my own again and leaving my stable 9 to 5. I was the top salesperson at my job, and I was making decent money, for a 9 to 5. And I had healthcare, and I had 401k, and I had stock options. And so I had it there, like it was good, but it wasn't enough for me. It didn't fill my passion. Yes, I was able to help people, but I wanted to help more people, and I wanted to be able to have the creative freedom because I'm very creative, and I want to be able to go out there and make a difference and make an impact. And so it came to me that when back at a 9 to 5, we all have our reviews and everything. And I remember that this was the time that I decided I had to make a change. I knew it was coming, but I didn't know exactly when. And it came sooner than I had planned. But I planned what I call my planning your exit strategy. Basically, I was preparing myself over time for this day. And what happened was when I had my review, that was kind of the confirmation that I was waiting for from everyone else to say, okay, Ed, it's time to go. Because when you're sitting there across the table from your manager and you get along with everyone, you love everyone and have a good time. But when you know that there's something else out there, that's calling for you and you're passionate about it, you know that you have to do it. The problem is that fear sets in and we wonder if we can do it, when we can do it, how we can do it. All these things come up. But then we have to realize that there's confirmation out there and we just have to be willing to listen. And up until that day when I had that meeting with my manager, the universe was calling to me and telling me multiple times. I mean, I felt like I was finally getting punched in the face because the slapping wasn't working. So somebody had to like punch me in the face to say, Ed, this is not your end game. Like, this is not what you're supposed to be doing. This was to get you to the next level. And so when I sat there in that meeting, I was confident with myself. I was confident with my numbers and where I took my store and where I was. And I decided going into that anything at that moment can change and that I would be okay with it because it was now or never. And when I found out that my raise was only going to be a quote, typical 3%, I leaned back in my chair and I relaxed and I said, that's great, but how do we get that to go up? And that answer was, well, maybe next year. And I said, no, I need something to happen now. And unfortunately that didn't happen. And when I left that meeting, I knew that was the final confirmation I needed to say, okay, Ed, this is your time. You got to do it. Go out, do it now. If nothing else works, you can always come back because you left on a good note and you can always find work. So I did.
Wow. Holy fuck.
That was a long answer. I know, but
that's not a long answer. That is a rich answer. So of course, now I got to start with the questions. All right, here we go, Ed. All right. Tell me about when you were in that conversation with your manager. Were you at a point where it actually wasn't going to matter what the number was? Did you feel enough conviction at that point that you knew you were on your way out and that you were still hoping to keep one foot in the door if they paid you enough to stay there? Would that have been satisfactory to you?
Oh, that is such a great question. And the short answer is yes. Here's the thing. Here's the thing. Because I love what I do and I love working, not because I have to. I mean, obviously we all have to, but I've always worked multiple jobs. Let me just put that out there. Even when I was in college, I started and ran my own business, a magazine business, for 2 years while finishing college and working a couple part-time jobs. Like, I can do the work because I love it and I'm passionate about it. And that I don't consider it work. But when it came to that moment with my manager before finally going out on my own, yes, I knew that it really didn't matter what the number was. I was going to be leaving. However, if that number was higher and what I hoped it would be, even though I knew it wasn't realistic, but what I hoped it would be, it definitely would have made my decision harder and it would have made me think twice before finally calling it quits. Okay.
So with that being the case, I guess the question would then be, what did it signify to you if they had given you the number you were looking for? Because I can't believe it was just about the dollars, because the dollars could have been any dollars. It seems to me that there was some underlying thing there that you were looking for from them, whether it was validation or acknowledgement of your contribution, whatever it was, that there was another thing going on for you in that moment when you were sitting there and you didn't get it from them, which made it really easy to walk out the door. Now, was it just the money, or like did the number that you had set in your mind, were you thinking, okay, this number signifies something very important to me that goes way beyond the money? What was it for you that you were wanting and needing from them that you didn't get?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So, I think it ties into, and now I can kind of talk about this feeling because I'm more educated around the fact that the money. So growing up and working all the time for somebody else, I didn't come from money, right? Like I have hardworking parents who provided to get food on the table, worked paycheck to paycheck. And so I come from that hardworking background. And so for me, the value was always per hour, based on a per hour thing. And so when I hear people making, thousands and thousands of dollars a month doing XYZ, and, this person has so much, 6 figures and blah, blah, blah. Like, to me, that I just couldn't wrap my head around that, especially when I was at a 9 to 5. I was like, oh, like, I'm happy if I can make $20 an hour because everyone else is at 10 or maybe 15, And so when it wasn't about, because it's never about the money for me. I mean, as long as my bills can get paid and I can live a decent life. I mean, I still have a 10-plus-year-old car. The doors squeak when you open it. It's got dents in it.
I love it. I love that car.
I mean, it's actually a car that, like, it's a beater up car, and I'm wanting to get a new car, but I'm also not wanting to part with that. There's a sentimental thing there, and it's because I don't need to be, at keeping up with the Joneses. Like, I just want to be at a decent, comfortable level where I can help others and push them forward. And for me, it's never been about the money or how many likes or how many followers you have. To me, it's about helping each person I can find something new, help them get to the next level, discover something, teach them something like that. That's what brings me joy. And that's what my passion is. And so I was able to get that at the 9 to 5 on a small scale. And I just knew, like, there was more for me to do. And I had to get outside of the 4 walls that the 9 to 5 had me in. And I needed to, just run with it because there would be no other time. And I'll say I'm in my 30s and I've worked hard all my life, all through my teenage years, through my 20s. And finally, when I hit 30, I feel like I retired, if you will. It's very crazy to say, but I felt like I retired, and I'm actually loving what I'm doing and doing more. And it's funny because when I used to work with customers at the 9 to 5, I would get retired people in all the time, and they worked more than when they worked their regular job before they retired. But they loved what they did and they were helping people. And so it's just really cool to be able to say that and to see that. And, I wake up every morning pinching myself, wondering if today's the day everything's going to crumble and I'm going to have to figure out what's next.
Okay. Now you just gave me that one, Ed.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that. Talk to me about that feeling.
Yeah. So, it's funny because I actually just did a Facebook Live about that this morning, about, it doesn't matter whether you're at a 9 to 5, you're thinking about leaving your 9 to 5, you're running your own business, like whatever your situation is, it doesn't matter. You should always be planning your exit strategy. And I've done this back at the 9 to 5. Again, it was solid. I had a steady paycheck. I had all these benefits. I did it at the beginning of my business. I still do it now a little bit, but not as much. And what it is I always am looking to see what jobs are out there. I'm always curious. And maybe that's just the researcher in me, but I don't want to be in a position where what I'm doing falls apart for whatever reason, and then I'm stuck not being able to know what's going on in the world and not be able to move forward. You can kind of think of it as, if you don't watch the news, how else are you going to figure out what's going on in the world? Like, if you don't leave your house, you're not going to be able to see the beautiful garden that you could drive by, when you leave, or you're not going to be able to see that it's sunny if you never leave your office, and so it's opening up your world, even if you don't have to find a job right now, like just knowing what's out there and what you could apply for and what companies you would want to apply for, especially if you're at a 9 to 5. It's just good to have. I just always like having a backup plan, and then a backup plan and a backup plan.
Well, I think that's a really, really smart approach because it doesn't keep one foot in that other world. It just reassures you that it's possible to go back to that other world. So that begs the
Yeah.
question for me about you. If things were going south in the business that you're in right now, if they were going south and, you're 2, 3, 4, 5 years into it and you're not realizing the kind of return on investment in that business, do you feel that you would really be okay going back into that old world that you came from?
So no, because I cannot handle a 9 to 5 anymore. I am totally like literally I would be so bored, and it's one of those things like, trust me, I have had those moments probably mostly in year 1 and 2. But I've had those moments where I literally, it came down to, should I apply again at my 9 to 5? Should I just do it? Because I'm so used to working and having money come in. And again, it's not a lot of money. It's just, I like to keep things coming in because I know things are coming out. And I don't want to be in a position where I have to struggle to pay those bills and to really have my health suffer and everyone else around me suffer. So for me, being able to say to myself, okay, I might have to go back to a 9 to 5. I don't want to because they're getting a deal. Let's just be honest. I mean, if I ever went back to a 9 to 5, whoever's hiring me, boy, are they getting a deal, because I now know exactly what my worth is and what I bring to the table, which I've always kind of known, but like now I really know. And so being able to tell myself, no, you need to push through. You are still in a good place. You still are okay. Keep moving forward. Because like you had mentioned earlier, would I have kept one foot in the door and worked part-time at the 9 to 5 and do my side hustle when I first started out? Absolutely. I tell people all the time, if you can do that, do it. It's smart. You can get a paycheck on one side and maybe benefits. Where I was able to, if I were to be part-time, I would have been able to still kept my benefits. But because of the job, I wasn't able to have the creative freedom that I have, right? And so that was not an option for me, which is good, because I would have never, if it did allow me to do that, I would have probably never done what I've done so far, if that makes sense. And I probably would have not been able to move forward on my own.
Oh, absolutely. It makes sense. And excuse me, I think one of the things that happens when you go out on your own, however it is that you get there, is you discovered your real worth. And unless you're out in the marketplace on your own, relative to other people who are out there, there's no measure for it. There's nothing to compare yourself against. There's no way for you to say, this is what you have to offer and this is what you do for people, and, what other people are doing. This is what's problematic about it, not as a criticism, but just as simply knowing and understanding your expertise and being able to share that with prospective clients. And you never have that ability when you're working for other people because you're just an employee. And so I think it makes perfect sense, you feeling the way you feel at the end of the day in all of this. And I think that, my fascination around this idea of knowing that you can look behind you and see that old life and possibly step back into it if you need to. I think that no matter how tough it gets, and, tell me if this is correct for you, Ed, no matter how tough it gets in what you are doing in the venture that you are now involved in, and you've chosen this path for yourself, if you were to look at it in terms of, okay, if I were to look at my situation right now and say, oh, well, it's not going so great, and then turn around and look back at an old relationship would you ever in a million years go back into that old relationship just because it was familiar or it was safe and it was comfortable? Like, how on earth could you ever go back to a relationship that you left? There were reasons that you left that relationship. And I think that there is a way that we comfort ourselves in really difficult moments in our businesses. Once we've gone out on our own, we use looking back or looking at the old employer or a similar employer or knowing that there are opportunities out there in the market just as a way of letting us know everything is going to be okay. When in fact, we actually do know it's going to be okay. We're just having a tough day and a tough go of it. What are your thoughts about that?
I'm sitting here smiling from ear to ear, nodding my head. Yes. Like, yes, that is perfect. And I love that you bring up the relationship thing because, I like to make things easy and relatable. And that's true. Like, why would I go back? I mean, to an old relationship if it didn't work out? Like, there was a reason why it didn't work out. So yeah. And that's the thing, I know, cause I've been back to the 9-to-5 to visit friends and stuff. And I know deep down inside that I can't. I've outgrown that. And I can barely go and, walk by, let alone to be there for 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week, XYZ, right? Like, I know that I just can't. It's just not me.
Yeah, I think that is probably true for most entrepreneurs who've come out of these other environments. And, whether you were forced out of it or you made a choice, much like you did, where you go in another direction and you're on your own. And I think for the lion's share of the time, you're fully in that feeling of knowing you are in the right place and that you could never go back into that other situation. And that's really easy to feel that way all the time when things are going great. It's when things aren't going so well, when you haven't landed another client in a certain period of time, when your sales have slowed due to the economy or whatever it is that's having a direct impact on your livelihood and your sense of security and stability and certainty and well-being in life. That's, of course, the moment at which you start looking somewhere else because maybe there is some security in there. And so if you can talk a little bit about this journey that you've been on as an on your own entrepreneur, where you've got all the skin in the game, you've got all of the risk, the reward is all yours, but until you build it to a certain place, the certainty is not there, the instability and insecurity exist. It's the nature of what it means to be an entrepreneur. And if you can talk to me a little bit and share with me about, as you've gone through your entrepreneurial journey on your own, the kinds of challenges that have been most difficult for you. And I would say the ones that are most difficult are the ones that are emotional in nature, because that is when the self-doubt creeps in and you start wondering what the hell you're doing. And, what did I get myself into? And is this ever going to end? Is it ever going to improve? Talk to me about your own business and what that's been like for you, if in fact that's even happened to you.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, you nailed it right there. A couple things come to mind for that. So when I first started my business, like most entrepreneurs, I was like, I have all of these things I can do. I'm going to help everyone. And I'm just going to throw up my website and there it is. And, I got a couple website clients right off the bat, which was awesome. But then you realize that you want to start niching down. I used to do not only web design, which I still do. I'm not a coder, but I work with a specific template and I can create things for people, including digital store, to just get them up and running, because I know how hard it can be when you're trying to get a website and how expensive it can be and frustrating. So I started with websites because I wanted to help people in there and I knew that I could offer something there. So with that, I was just jumping in saying, yes, anything. And then over time, I realized, no, I need to be more specific. I need to just narrow it down to what I know that I can put out and that is easy for the other person to manage. And so I did. I finally narrowed it down. I do XYZ with here's this option, a DIY option. Here is I'm going to help you get started. And then here's I'll build it for you, right? Like boom, magic 3. Here's your options, done deal. And then everyone goes home happy. So that's kind of how my web design part of the business has evolved. And then when it comes to like the marketing part, I started out with social media management, and I had a great client. I got paid really well, and it was fairly easy work. But I quickly realized that I did not want to manage somebody else's social media account. I can come up with a strategy. I can help you implement. I can share with you like best practices and work with you around that. But at the end of the day, I want you to do that. Like it's kind of like busy work for me if I were to stick with that. So I decided I couldn't do that anymore. And so again, you start to filter out what works and what doesn't. And if you're just starting out, the best thing to do, of course, is to start writing out things that you like to do, things that you can do, and things that you don't want to do. I know I like teaching, so everything comes out at least once there. But it's a habit. I just can't break that habit, which is good because then people get free education, right?
Right.
So there's been that. And then as time has evolved, I have really started to narrow down things. And I'll tell you, I'll be honest, year 3, which is what I'm in right now, has been I don't want to say the most successful, because you learn as you go and you keep building and creating. And so it's not fair to give year 1 and 2, no credit. But so far in year 3, and we're just, a couple months in, has been amazing. And it's almost like I have a hard time, I'll be honest, I have a hard time enjoying the moment and celebrating it, because I'm always like, okay, but I want it to be sustainable, right? Like, especially at the beginning of the year for most businesses, but especially in web business, you usually get a chunk at the beginning of the year, and then that kind of sets you up for the rest of the year, and then things kind of slowly die out. And so, I'm enjoying what's happening. I currently have a amazing 3-month retainer with a new client where I'm basically doing everything that I wanted to do, and it came to me. It was awesome. And so while I have that as like my cushion, I guess you could say, it's still, I'm not just sleeping on it, right? Like I'm not just saying, oh, well, I'm good for the next 3 months and then I'll worry about it later. No, like literally every day I wake up, I do the work that needs to be done. And then I figure out, okay, what else do I need to do to prepare me for what comes next? Because I don't want to just sit back and say, I'm good. We're great. I'm just got this 3-month retainer. We're solid for next 3 months. Like, no, you need to figure out what you need to do. Like what else can you do? And how are you, fine tuning your business to make sure that more people come? And for me, I'm not necessarily the type where I want more clients in the sense that I need all these clients. No, I rather have less. Less is more for me. I'd rather have less clients that I can really focus in on and really help than to have all these crazy clients, not crazy, but like all these clients that will burn me out, right? Like I want to be able to be there to provide the best that I can, and less is more for me.
Right. And so would you say during the first couple of years of the business that you were, not so much pivoting as you were going along the way, but you were learning along the way and you were making decisions? It was your next move. It's okay, I've discovered this. I'm going to do this other thing, or I'm going to, like you said, it niche down where I don't want to be doing those other things, but you had to try those different things out to know what it was that you were ultimately going to do. And is that fair to say about the first couple of years?
Oh yeah. And I mean, I don't know if it's just me or if that's the nature of the game, but you are always doing that. You really are like you always should be educating yourself. You're always fine tuning and realizing what you like and what you don't like, and realizing that, maybe that's not something that you should get into right now. Like put it on the back burner. Maybe that's something that you want to get into now, but you're just not sure. I mean, there's all these things, but yes, learning and being able to grow with that. I have never read so many books in my life. I kid you not. Since starting my business, I have read more books than I have read in my entire life. I mean, I used to be able to count up to the probably up to my late 20s. I could count the number of books I read on both hands. And that was like, I mean, I used to open a book and I would fall asleep after reading the first or second page. Like, no joke. I'd buy books. They look great. They sound great. I open them up. They go to the bookshelf. Like, I don't even read them. Right. And now, since doing my own business, running my own business, I am like churning out books left and right. And people were like, Ed, how are you reading all these books? What are you doing with all of this information? Like, that's what I do. Like, that's what I do. And then I share that and teach that out.
Right. Now, what's really interesting about you, Ed, in what you just described about the first couple of years of your business, which I think is quite unique, and that is I don't detect any hint of you struggling with the fact that these things were changing all the time. And it sounds like you actually were just a voracious consumer of what was happening and taking in that information, digesting it, and then making another move. You were constantly looking at your situation and saying, what's my next move? And then you would make that move. But for a lot of people who start businesses, and I'm sure that you've had this experience with your own clients, they come into starting a new business and they've got a really fixed set of ideas about what that business is going to be. And then they start decompensating when the thing is actually telling them, no, that's not the direction we're going. We're going to do something else and you better come along because we're going to leave you behind. And then they get really freaked out because they feel, no, that's not what I intended to do. And oftentimes they're just not even listening to what the consumer is saying to them because they're so, they have such a hard and fast rule about what this thing is supposed to be. And they become discouraged. They look behind them at the old relationship. And in many cases, they give up. And you didn't do any of that. So 2 questions for you. What do you think is going on for people that are really not able to make those pivots and make those subtle shifts or big shifts to respond to what's happening so that they can keep moving? And the second question is, what is so different about you that makes it possible for you to adapt so easily? Because adapting is not something that comes easy to most people.
Yeah, no, sure. So what's interesting, that you point that out. And I think it has a lot to do with, cause I won't lie, there have been days, trust me, at the beginning that, and I still go through them every so often, but there are days, mostly at the beginning, where I literally would take the entire day and ask myself, what am I doing? What is going on? I mean, there's days where you feel like a crazy person because there's no joke. Like, I literally will have days where I feel like a crazy person because I literally will sit there and map everything out. I will write the same thing in 3 different ways on 3 different pieces of paper before it finally clicks. And I'm like, oh yeah, I had that back at stage 1. Now I'm at stage 3, like there are days. And I think, I actually just read this part in this book about, or in an article that said, the one key component for being creative is embracing the quiet, like surrounding yourself with the silence.
I love that.
And what's interesting is that I think that's probably what ties into what we were just talking about, is that I allowed myself to rest. Like I literally, there are some days I felt like I couldn't get out of bed because I couldn't figure out what to do. I knew I had a ton of things that I should be doing, but I didn't know what to do. And so I would struggle because I'm the type that I don't stay in bed, and I keep things moving. And so for me to do that, I would waste all this brain power and energy fighting with myself and beating myself up on these days where I'm like, dude, just get up and do it. Like, figure it out and keep it moving. And then I realized that if I allow myself to relax in those moments and just try not to do anything and be in that silence, the answers come to me. The dots get connected, and I figure out the next step. And it helps, and I'll say, like, yes, I'm the one doing all of this. And yes, I'm responsible for my success and what comes next. But I always like to remind myself and everyone else that we have what I call our team. Our team doesn't have to be the people that we actually pay as an employee or a contractor or whatever. Like, our team is our family, our friends, those who are around us that are helping us, even if it's just picking us up coffee once a week, or, doing the dishes, or doing the laundry, or picking up the kids, or taking the dog out, or whatever it is. Like, that is a member of your team. And without them, it would be harder. And I know for a fact that for me, if I didn't have the people in my life that are on my team around me, this would be a totally different conversation. Even though I know, like, this is where I got myself to, it's the people in my life that I've chosen to surround myself with, who believe in me and who are invested in me. Those are the people that have helped me get to where I am, which is why I always tell people teamwork equals success. And you really have to know that in order to get to where you want to be, you have to have people help you. You cannot get to where you want to be by yourself. And you have to credit them, because that credit's due. Like, they're the ones helping you get to where you need to be.
Oh, absolutely. And the thing is that you have to treat them as what they are. They are your cheerleaders, and they are on your team. You are their person. And they are there for you. They are there in support of you, and they want to see you be successful. And they also want to be there for you when things get really, really fucking hard. And at the end of the day, when you find your success, those are the people that you most want to share it with. Because I would venture to say that for most people, myself included, the entrepreneurial endeavor that we engage in is very much associated with the freedom that it gives us, that then extends to the people we are closest to, because they are in large part why we're doing what we're doing. It's not a solitary journey that we're on. It may feel like it, but at the end of the day, we are working towards something. We are all wanting the best life we can possibly have. And that life usually includes a number of other very important people. And so I love your point about how important it is to have your team with you, because on those days where, as you say, you just can't get out of bed, or you're just gutting it out and you're not getting anywhere, or it feels like you're not getting anywhere, those are the people that you need to lean on the most, because you cannot sustain yourself alone. And this is a boulder. You are pushing up a very big mountain, and you're going to be pushing it probably the rest of your life, so long as you choose to be an entrepreneur. And it's always easier to roll that boulder up a mountain when you've got other people helping you do it than it is to do it alone.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I got to tell you, your journey is really quite extraordinary, and just your approach to it. And I love this idea of embracing the silence, and that may be the distinguishing characteristic between yourself and people who really are not able to manage the reality of what it means to be an entrepreneur. And, just talk a little bit more about the idea of embracing the silence, because I think it is very provocative. It's very thought provoking, and it may be that, the audience really can't quite get at, all right, but what does that mean? If you're going to embrace the silence, how does that manifest itself? What are all of the ways that it manifests itself? Because the one thing I keyed in on was when you were talking about, oh, Ed, just get out of bed and get the job done. And you're just driving and driving and driving yourself. That's what everybody does because they think that's what's going to enable them to get the job done. But in fact, it actually interferes with their ability. So if you had, thoughts about it, if somebody were coming to you in this situation where they're just struggling like crazy and they're just grinding on themselves and beating themselves up because the situation is what it is, what would you tell them to do that really does fall into this realm of embracing the silence?
Yeah, definitely. Obviously it would be case by case and we can dive deeper once we knew that information. But for general purposes, it's one of those things that you really have to think about, like simple thing, like I mentioned earlier, is writing down the things that you like to do, the things that you're good at, the things that you don't want to do. And even if the things that you maybe are interested in, but don't know how to do, like just making simple lists like that. And then also what I like to call the parking lot question list. You don't know, you have all these questions and you don't know the answers, boom, they go on that parking lot list and you keep it moving. Because I think what happens a lot of the time, because I know I do this too, is that we all will have these questions. Can I do this? Is someone going to buy from me? What is it that I can sell? All of these, questions come up. And what happens is we get stuck on them. Therefore, we can't be creative because we just, we might have just gotten listen, we just got a great idea. It's awesome. Like this is going to be changing the world. I love it. I haven't done any market research or anything, but I just know it's going to be the best. Right? Sound familiar?
Oh my God. Have I heard that every day of my life?
Yes. So, it's great. And then we decide, okay, but now how are we going to tell the world? Okay, I need a website. Oh, but how do I have a website? Websites are expensive, aren't they? I don't know how to website. Like you start going down the rabbit hole of all of these things that you have questions, but you don't have the answers to, and then you'll get hung up on those. And so what's the magic of the parking lot question list is that you put those questions on there and you keep things moving forward. You don't know the answer, boom, it goes on that list. And then you keep going. You don't know the answer, boom, it goes on that list. And then what you do is you take a break and you come back and you look at that list. Whether, let's say you went and you finally did a Google search because you had time on your break. I'm going to use a 9-to-5er. You had time on your break to look up, most cost-effective way for building a website. Boom. Now you have an answer to that question. You can check it off the list. Now what's your next thing? Okay, I know what route I want for having a website built for me, but what's going to go on the website? Well, now you got to map it out. Pen and paper, don't worry about the tech. What happens a lot of the times too is that we go straight for the technology because it's supposed to make our lives easier. It's right there in our hands. And what happens is a lot of people aren't tech savvy. And that's okay because that's where I come in and that's where other people come in to help you. So it's okay if you're not tech savvy, but it's not going to help you in that moment when you're trying to be creative and being productive. So go with what you know, which is the pen and paper, and just let the ideas flow and just write things down and don't get hung up on, those questions and keep moving forward, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that the real big takeaway from what you've just described with very helpful and practical ways that people can do this is that the net result of it is it actually allows you to maintain your power and sense of control in that situation.
Yeah.
And that is probably more important than anything, especially when you're on an entrepreneurial journey or you have been confronted with a major life change that's either forced on you or has been forced on you, or you have chosen to take on yourself. And this idea of keep it moving, the best part of that is you are staying in your left brain. You are not allowing your right brain to deliver all of those messages that have to do with your emotions that will, in fact, pull you down the rabbit hole, because that is the place where you are going to begin doubting yourself. And that's the last thing you can ever afford on a journey like this. And so it sounds like that is something that you have really mastered. I mean, Ed, just the way that you talk about what you've been doing and your approach to it, it's been consistent all along. And you've had the good fortune, of course, of doing the kind of work that's been really satisfying to you for most of your career at this point. And, you know, barring the problem at the point that 3 years ago you had the review done and you were really at a crossroads where you just said, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm going to go out on my own. You've been really fortunate that you have been able to do what you love. And now you've been able to turn that into something that's your own, so that you're not working for the man, so to speak, and making everybody else the money. You are now, everything that you're doing is now going to benefit you. And you have a really actionable approach that is going to enable you to keep pushing this thing forward to the kind of success that you want to have. And I just think that's absolutely brilliant and really speaks to who you are as a person, who is so clearly focused on where he wants to go, and yet can still acknowledge this really sucks sometimes. Sometimes I don't know what to do. And it's a bitch to get out of bed sometimes because it's so frustrating and it's so hard. And it is the back and forth and the pivoting and the uncertainty and everything else. But what you have is you no longer have to look back at your old life and at the prospect of being in an old life and an old relationship. You staying in motion allows you to always keep looking forward, which is what you need to be able to keep going.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I'm like, can you hang out with me every day and remind me of that? I'm glad it makes sense.
Yeah, no kidding. But you know, the beautiful thing is that those moments don't come very often, no matter how hard this stuff gets. When you have conviction, you know, a lot of people feel that they don't have the self-confidence or the confidence to be able to do these things, but it actually isn't confidence. I think people are confident. What they're missing is the conviction, because it is in the conviction that you feel that sense of urgency that makes you keep gutting it out and going forward and demanding that this thing work. And you're very clear and focused about what you need to be doing. And so in a way, there's almost no choice other than to make this thing work. And if something's not working, you figure it out and you pivot. You just keep moving forward. But the motion and the constant motion is essential to the viability of what you're doing, and also the longevity and your own personal ability to weather every storm that you are undoubtedly going to encounter along the way.
Yes, it's so true. And you know, it's funny that you mentioned that, because that's also part of in embracing that silence that we talked about, that I reflect a lot I take the time to reflect on what I've done, because we're always, especially as, entrepreneurs, we're always thinking forward. We're always trying to work on the to-do list and knocking things off. But I try to look as much as possible on what I've done and reflect on that and understand, like, those things that I did in the past, one, were great and they did what they needed to do. And two, they got me to where I'm at now. You know, a simple example would be when I first did my first podcast, which was Yes to Entrepreneurship. Like, that was just because I wanted to have conversations with people. And I thought that would be fun. And it was great. It served its purpose. It was a short run and it was great. But guess what? Now that I look back, it's what set me up for now my Facebook Live show, which is Ed Talk TV that we had you on. And And what's crazy is at that time when I did the podcast, I didn't think that I was going to ever do a Facebook Live because cameras, no, like no audio. Let's just do audio. We're good. Nobody has to see me. We're good. And then I realized when I was reflecting back that I did all of the work for the podcast to get me to where I'm at now, where I can have more interaction with people and I can bring people into my world and really be able to educate them. And at that point, it's basically free training, right? It's for those who can't afford to do something now or who don't know where to go. Like that's their starting point, just like anybody's blog posts or podcast episodes, or, that's the content that you start with that really everyone can get to and everyone can afford because it's just a click away. It's just,
oh my God. That is so true, Ed. It's unbelievable the number of things that we do on our journey that we don't actually realize are creating the bricks in the foundation of what we're ultimately going to do. And it just one day reveals itself about the truth of what we are supposed to be doing. But had we not done those 10,000 things leading up to that moment, we would have never had that moment. And so you can't ever think that what you're doing is a mistake or a failure. It's all part of the foundation of the learning and the gathering of skills that are taking you to a place where you're going to put it all together in one place. And that's when you're going to hit pay dirt. And clearly that is where you have arrived at this point. Now, in our last couple of minutes here, you touched on it, your TV show on the internet. Like, please tell the audience because I want them to go listen because it's magnificent.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so Ed Talk TV is all about conversations worth having. It's one of those things that I've utilized the technology right now. Facebook and everyone else is trying to encourage people to have their own shows. And while the technology is somewhat there and people are starting to dabble in it, I've taken what's available and basically took it to the next level. And now I have this show called Ed Talk TV, and it's basically a talk show where we cover business, tech, and the user experience because that's what we all need to be educated on and connect around, especially running a business or starting one for those who are thinking about it. And what's great about it is it's allowed me to not only have a spot for me to have my voice heard, but more importantly, it allows me to bring people on like you, where I can have guests on the show. I encourage people to become a guest and to share what they know because it's all about having that conversation. And that's what social media originally started as. For anybody who can remember, Facebook and Twitter were the two big ones when it first started. And it always said, join the conversation at Facebook, join the conversation at Twitter. That went out the window somewhere along the way. And so I've always been about that conversation. And I mean, that's how I was number one at sales back in my 9-to-5. That's how I've been all my life, is that I'm about the relationship. I'm about building that long lasting relationship. I'm not about the quick money overnight. And so having this show has allowed me to not only be on camera and be present 5 days a week, which is crazy. But it's also allowed me to grow not only as a person, but grow my business. My 3-month retainer client came to me from watching my lives. Now we kind of met prior to that, but they continued their journey with me by watching my Facebook lives and therefore decided I was the right person for them. There was another job that came from watching one of my show episodes. So it is something to be aware of and to understand that there is power with that live video. And it allows me to bring people onto the show that might not otherwise be sharing what they know. They might not have a place for their voice to be heard. And so I'm opening that door. I'm helping them get their knowledge out to the world, share their gift. But also what's amazing and what's beautiful about it is that I'm breaking them out of that box of fear and allowing them to come on camera, to have people see their face, to have people be able to connect with them. You know, I always say the magic happens in the comments, and on the show, we always are talking, on the show, we're always talking about, you know, we're always talking to live viewers and replay viewers and always encouraging people to comment, not because we want the Facebook algorithm to show the show more. I mean, that's obviously a bonus if that happens. But the point is that the magic happens in the comments, and through commenting, even if it's just a simple hello, I'm checking you out, this is my first time, whatever, you will see that it opens the doors for you. And that's how I've become so involved in all these different Facebook groups, and how people have gotten to know me over the past 3 years online. How my business has developed is because I provide value, I show up, I deliver, and I engage. And those are my 3 core topics there, you know, show up, deliver, and engage. Those are close to my heart. And that's what I encourage you and everyone to do, because it really does help you and your business grow.
Oh my God, Ed. what
I know.
What a
I'm
gold mine
passionate.
of
What can I
information.
say?
Oh, I love it so much. And normally I end the conversation asking the guest if, you know, they had any last thoughts they wanted to share with the audience, but I think you actually just did, and have provided them with, you know, once again, actionable things that they can take away from this conversation we've had and actually apply them right now to whatever it is that they're doing. And I think this has been an extraordinarily valuable conversation. And I think that we're going to get a lot of feedback on it. And so before we wrap it up here, can you go ahead and tell everyone how people can reach you if they would like to?
Yeah, definitely. So the best place to go for everything is checkwithed.com. That is basically, I built that as kind of like my start here page, if you will. And that basically outlines everything for you. It's kind of a roadmap journey where, you know, if you want to be on the email list, boom, it's there. If you want to check out the show, boom, it's there. If you want to look at my services, it's there. If you want to see just tools that I recommend to you, it's there. If you want to see what's in my shop, it's there. You know, like that's your go-to spot. And through that, you'll be able to find me on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. I mean, you know, it's all over there, but checkwithed.com is the best place to go.
Oh, that's brilliant. One-stop shopping. I love it. One click and you're done.
Yes, exactly.
Oh my God. Thank you so very much for spending this time with me today. I appreciate you taking the time. I know you're super busy with your TV show every single day out there on the internet. And I hope you'll come back at some point. This has just been really wonderful. And it's so great to talk with you again. And I will be seeing you soon.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much. This has been amazing. And I can't wait to come back.
Oh, that's excellent. Thank you. So for all of you who are listening, as I always say when I wrap it up, what's your next move? I'm Arlene Battishill. Thanks so much for listening. I'll be back with another episode. Welcome to What's Your Next Move, the podcast for peak performers who are making things happen, but are running into roadblocks that prevent them from getting what they want. Whether you work for someone else, you're an entrepreneur, thinking about starting your own business, or at a point in your life where you just can't make the move from where you are to where you want to go, you're in the right place. This podcast is all about answering one question: what's your next move? And helping you harness your power so your next move is the one that changes your life. I'm your host and resident provocateur, Arlene Battishill, and I want to know, what's your next move?